Good evening. I'm Jason Parrish. I'm portraying Henry David Thoreau in this play. I'm also your host for the Gala this evening. But first, let me introduce you to the man himself. Henry David Thoreau was a 19th century writer, philosopher, and essayist. He became an icon of pacifism, nonviolence, and freedom for all time. Henry Thoreau lived in Concord, Massachusetts, the epicenter of the Transcendental movement. He was a contemporary of Ralph Waldo Emerson and became the living embodiment of the Transcendentalist views of idealism, self-reliance, and belief in the universal mind, a power that lives in all of us and allows us to transcend our own limitations. Henry took his view of transcendentalism to the extreme by withdrawing from society, and in 1846, he built a cabin for himself on the bank of Walden Pond in order to live simply with nature. In July of 1846, Thoreau's peaceful existence was threatened when he was arrested for not paying his poll taxes to protest the Mexican War, a war he believed to be unjust and begun by the government's selfish interests. The product of his experience in jail was the essay Civil Disobedience, a radical call for change in an unjust world. Thoreau's words and actions inspired generations of thinkers in the 1960s and 70s, troubled times when America's involvement in the Vietnam War caused unrest and dissension that paralleled the America of Thoreau's day. In addition, young people were desperately trying to make sense of life. People turned to Thoreau for answers, especially in his essay Civil Disobedience. It is this essay that most of the night Thoreau spent in jail is based on. It sums up his nonviolent protest to an unjust government and an unjust time, which is still relevant today. This is the Virginia Jenkins Studio Theater, which serves as our small performance space as well as classroom space for acting classes. This evening, you'll hear interviews in this room with some of the cast members. The text seems to suggest that the Thoreau of this play is a bit of a social misfit. He doesn't interact well with others, but at the heart of him there is a very passionate and very deeply feeling person. And he's also and because he's so passionate, you get some very strong feelings from him, some strong lines. Some of the lines themselves are very heavy-handed. So it's difficult for any actor to come at this role and try to find the human qualities of him. So that's what we've tried to do. Henry was put in jail because he didn't pay his poll taxes for a period of 6 years. He was reacting peacefully against what he thought was an unjust government, and he felt the government was using his money unjustly. He felt they were using it to finance this war with Mexico, which he felt was a complete and utter selfish action on the part of the United States government, slaveholders grasping for more slave territory. And Congress didn't back it up. The president enacted this war on his own with no help from anybody. And the intellectual community of the time just gasped and said, "What are you doing?" While the masses just supported the government. Sure, we'll support our government, what they say is good, and we'll do what they want us to do. Well, Henry was one of the only people at the time to speak out against it, and one of the things he did was not pay his taxes, and the government caught up with him, and he was arrested, and he was to be put in jail until his taxes were paid. So Henry's going against this government was a relatively revolutionary thought. This was less than 100 years from the Revolution, but people had become so comfortable. And Henry was reacting against it. He was reacting against the mentality of go along, do what your superiors tell you to do. You have to imagine that Thoreau had an interesting relationship with his family. I have to imagine him as the uncle that people didn't really want to talk about. He had a good relationship with his mother. There was a loving relationship there, but she just didn't understand him. She loved him anyway, but she just didn't get him.
My name is Amy DeAngelis, and I play Mrs. Thoreau, Henry's mother. Mrs. Thoreau is a very energetic kind of person. She runs the household. You never see Henry's father, but he's alive during this time. But Mrs. Thoreau runs the household, and she's very energetic, very caring, and she's very important because in real life, she had such a big influence on Henry's life and his ideas and what he was allowed to do in the sport that she gave him. I think she's sometimes very frustrated by the fact that he just won't just go along and just keep working, because she knows and she appreciates the fact that he's very smart and he's very passionate about his ideas, and she doesn't want to quench that. She doesn't want to say, no, just stop, but she doesn't quite want him to be as rambunctious as he is with some of his ideas.
And then, of course, there is his Aunt Louisa, who is someone who's mentioned in the play, but she's not really a character we see a lot of. He didn't like her a whole lot. She was an abolitionist in New England, so he kind of, I think he felt of her, he thought that she was a bit of a hypocrite. But probably the most striking relationship that Thoreau had with anyone in his family was with his brother John. In the pages of this script and in other books and in biographical things, it's a very powerful relationship that the two of them had. They were opposites in a couple different ways, but they connected so well, and there was such a love and respect between the two of them that it almost seems to me the ideal brotherly relationship.
Hi, my name is John Warren, and I play Henry David Thoreau's brother, John Thoreau. John is the older of the two brothers, and Henry and John are opposites, but at the same time, they are the same person. They're opposites in the way that Henry is like the thorns on a rose bush, and John is like the petals. He's the kind of person that I think everyone wants to be around. He has one of those personalities that's just very, very unique and very free. In fact, I think he is the one that inspires Henry to do a lot of things that he does.
It came at a time in Henry's life when he was just despondent about the educational system, about educating children, and he felt that the public school system wasn't doing the job that it needed to do, and he resigned his position. And John, in the play, is credited with coming along right at the right moment and inspiring this thought in Henry.
John comes up with the idea that we don't, need a school building to have a school. We don't need a school committee to have a school. We don't need textbooks to teach and to enlighten minds. All we need is what God gave us. And he's very passionate about that idea, and he throws that at Henry and says, look, Henry, we don't need all that, and you're so worried about this. Just let it all go. Try something new.
There's a distinction that needs to be made in this play. Both characters, John and Henry, need to be likable people. John needs to be a very charismatic person who people fall in love with just by being in the room with him, whereas Henry is a different kind of likable. Henry is a bit more, he says it himself, he's cantankerous where John is amiable. He's thorns and brambles where John is a garden. Henry is a really likable guy. You just have to understand where he's coming from, whereas with John, you don't have to work at it. You just love John. You just feel John's presence in his aura. So it's a nice distinction that I think we've done successfully in this play, is to try to get the relationship between the brothers, but at the same time see the contrast between the brothers.
The interesting thing about Emerson in this particular show is that this man is such a larger-than-life character. I mean, he's basically the father or grandfather of transcendentalism, depending on the way you look at it. And he has this, because he has left so much behind in terms of his writings and his speeches, so many people, both, and Henry Thoreau included, have an opinion of what he is or who he is. And when you boil it all down, Emerson is really nothing less and nothing more than a man. He is a man who enjoys thinking and talking and communicating with others, but when you boil everything down, he is not an incredible figure. He's a man. Henry meets him at a point in Henry's life when Henry needs some guidance, and he gets that from what Emerson is talking about in his lectures.
The play begins with him graduating Harvard, and you find out that his experience there was less than fulfilling. He left feeling like he could have been taught more, he could have learned more, there was more he could have gotten out of the experience. But the one thing he did leave Harvard with was the experience of seeing Ralph Waldo Emerson speak, hearing the man's words in a lecture, and he was completely inspired by him.
Emerson speaks about the universal mind and the oversoul, but he also talks about how it is most important for each person to be an individual. That the idea of being yourself, no matter who that is or what that is, and looking for natural beauty and understanding the world around you to such a depth that you can see yourself in it. These concepts are the things that I've pulled out of this, and they're exciting and interesting concepts to me. I can't imagine what they would be like for someone of Henry's caliber who was thirsting for a world to believe in, almost. Waldo, for his part, is just fascinated by this young man. This young man has the fire in him that Emerson maybe had 10, 15 years ago. But Emerson really has become, I don't want to say complacent, because I don't think the man ever became complacent, but he definitely became more willing to accept the world around him.
He's famous, he's wealthy, and he lives in New England, and he has everything that he could want. He's comfortable, he's well-fed, and Henry believes that he's not really practicing what he preaches.
He had gotten so used to certain comforts before he really began to think about the world around him that his flaw would be to me that he just does not, he's too weary to try and live what he talks about. The best that he can do is simply communicate it to young people who can.
She herself was very influential among the women of Concord. She had her own ideas on transcendentalism. She tries her best to give both of the men in her life, Henry and Ralph, what they need, like their support, her support rather, haha. She just tries to do the best she can to support without compromising her own ideas. Well, one of the challenges about Lydian is just getting into the time period, getting into how women of that time would act. But another challenge of hers is that her love, her affection for these two people is so split. And she does feel love for Henry, and she feels love for her husband. And that conflicts so often, especially since her husband is away and Henry's here. And Henry also embodies everything her husband talks about and kind of what she fell in love with her husband for, his ideas. Henry is the embodiment of all those ideas. So it's such a difficult part to portray.
Walden is a beautiful place, both physically and spiritually. I've seen it in pictures and on film, and it's amazing to look at. It's this beautiful pond isolated in the woods outside of Concord, Massachusetts. It's just so peaceful and serene. It's just all of those things. There aren't really words to describe it. Thoreau went there, as he put it, to live deliberately and become closer to nature. He believed that we're all related to nature and that through nature he would find himself. He didn't want to be part of society or depend on other people for his existence. He built his own cabin for a relatively small amount of money. He grew his own food. Just imagine how free that must feel. Most of us can't really imagine how free it is to be so independent. One of my favorite lines in the play is his response to the question, "What happens in the winter?" It snows, so I don't even have to go to the pond for fresh water. Just reach out the door for a handful of snow, melt it, and it's sweet as the sky. Walden has come to mean different things for different people. For Thoreau, it was his home, it was his refuge, but for young people in the late 60s and 70s who were looking for a voice, it became a place that they wanted to go to and visit as a pilgrimage to try to understand this man who had become their standard bearer, their voice. But it's so much more than that now. And the play uses it as a metaphor. It's a place of beauty. It's a place of freedom, a place where you can be yourself. He tells another character, you must find your own Walden. If you want any light in your life, find your own Walden. And so I think that's the message that we should take from it, and that we should each try to find our own Walden.
It's so much. It's very fun. I enjoy it. She's an energetic character, which I'm a naturally energetic person, so it makes it easier to transfer a little bit of who I am into this character. A challenge is the fact that the mother, she's mostly written in for some kind of comic relief, so it's much harder to get into her and to really be like, well, to develop a relationship with her that's not a comic kind of relationship.
One of the most confusing things in the play for the audience becomes the aspect that a lot of it happens in the past, in Henry's mind. While Henry's in the jail, he's thinking about all these experiences and everything that has happened in his life up to this point, and that's where John comes in. And every time that you see John, it's in the past. And that's kind of a confusing aspect, I guess, for the audience and for me as an actor at the beginning.
One of the things I like the most about playing Waldo is also one of the things that I like the least about playing Waldo. He is such a well-known figure that most college students probably have some idea or some inkling of who he was and what he stood for. And many of them probably have a very good idea of who he is. That makes it very easy for me to sort of get a basic grasp of what the audience expects of me. But conversely, it also provides me with an interesting challenge of not presenting what they expect of me. Because if what you see on stage is exactly what you expect, then it's not going to touch you or affect you. In some ways, my job in this show was to find a way of portraying Waldo that may not represent this high ideological human being that most people expect to meet. It was a lot of fun for me to find the humanity and the humor and the flaws in this man. On top of that, because he's so well known, I will always offend someone in the audience with any portrayal of him, because everyone has a particular idea of who this man is. In fact, the only person that might run into more trouble with that than me would be Jason Parrish, who is playing Henry Thoreau, because if Emerson is well known, I think Henry Thoreau is even more well known.
No, I didn't really find it a daunting task to play someone who existed, someone who's so well known. I approached this like I would approach any other role, whether they were a real person or not, using the text. You have to start with the text. The text is your first resource. What is given to you in the text is the best place to start, I feel. And it's a bonus in this case that we have his writings, we have things written about him, we have documentaries about his life, so you can learn all of this other stuff about a person that usually you just have to either make up or take for granted. So I think that the fact that he's a well-known person who is writing out there, it's been a help to me rather than a hindrance. The thing that we've tried to do in this play is not try to play Henry David Thoreau, the icon, but rather to play and find Henry, the man.
Working with Jason Parrish. Well, since it's his last show here, I won't say too many horrible things about him. All right. He's okay to work with, I guess. It's more like a pain in the butt, really. He's so conceited. No, I'm joking. Jason's great. He's a great actor and a great person, and it's always a joy to work with him. I've worked with him 4 or 5 shows now, and it's just been a privilege every time. And every time I have grown because of him. I look up to Jason. He has been a mentor to me and a friend, and I will definitely be sad to see him go. But it's always a pleasure to work with him, to see him work and to just dive into any character that he's presented with. and spend hours just going over the script and even doing like research. I mean, he read so many books for the show on Thoreau and on his life and his diaries. It's just amazing to just see him just dive into a character and find out everything he can about someone. It's always a privilege, like I said. So yeah, working with Jason's okay. It's not bad. I'll definitely miss it.
Yeah, this is my last performance with Ashland University, and it's bittersweet. Bitter because I have so many fond memories of Ashland University and the stage, with 4 years of academic school year and 3 of the Summer Theater Festival. It's been a great ride for me, and I can't think of any other way to end my experience at Ashland University than with this play that has been one of my favorites for a very long time. So it's, I mean, in a way, it seems as though it's my torch song. I'm going out with this play, and it's a beautiful play. It's a wonderful character. It's been great to work with Murray once again. There's been, you know, a couple years of not working with Murray on stage, and it's been great working with Murray and Adam Brown. I certainly hope that you enjoy Adam Brown's performance tonight, because he has been an absolute delight to work with. We've gone to school together now for 3 years. We've been in plays together. We've never spoken on stage. And he and I have some of my favorite stage moments in this play. Those scenes are golden, and I really hope that you enjoy them, and I hope that you enjoy the play. This is it, the afternoon of opening night. In just a few hours, this space will be transformed into something completely different. It won't be just a scene shop anymore. It'll be the space between the stage and the dressing rooms. The lights will be dimmed, actors running around in various states of dress and costume, but most importantly, at 7:15, we'll meet as a company, actors, crew, stage manager, and most importantly, the director, and we'll hear some inspirational words from Murray Hudson.
Bigger than mine.
I want to thank our stage managers, Stephanie. I can candidly say that I could not have done this without their support. They're actually keeping me focused, because, you know, I just basically go off in lots of different directions sometimes.
Working with Murray is always an experience. He is always constantly throwing ideas at you, jumping up on stage, shouting from the back of the auditorium to get you where you need to be. And the most important part of his directing, I think, comes from the fact that he doesn't necessarily pull what he wants out of you. He doesn't grab onto something inside of you and yank it out. He more or less caresses it out.
Play, I'm excited about it, and I hope you are too. I have no idea what kind of audience we have, but once you do well, word of mouth will spread. So I just found this from Thoreau's journal today. And this is a prayer that he wrote in 1842. It said, "Great God, I ask thee for no manner of help, than that I may not disappoint myself, that in my action I may soar so high as I can now discern with this clear eye." So bending his meaning a little bit, you know, like directors sometimes do. Through your action, soar, and don't disappoint yourself, because you will disappoint the audience. Ready?
Yes.
1, 2, 3.
Cast conformity behind you!
Would you please have a one-on-one headset? And this is your 9 minutes.
Theater is a collaborative art, and this play is no exception. Students and faculty have come together in all areas of production. The designers, director, and actors have communicated successfully their vision throughout this process to bring you a beautiful play, both intellectually and visually. I hope you enjoy watching it as much as I've enjoyed my small part in bringing it to life.